All right, welcome to this video. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is benevolence for all in alignment with the highest levels of love, light, and oneness. And I'm just going to go into perhaps a little bit of flow, as well as give a little energy update on some of the synchronicities that I've been seeing. And so maybe I should begin with that, or perhaps I'll start with the flow and then go into a little 3D, or not really 3D, but a little bit more linear perspective about the energies. So I invite you to take a deep breath in and a long exhale. And it's always good to set an intention no matter what you're doing, whether it be going to work, driving in your vehicle, going into meditation or yoga. So I set this intention that it, of course, be for the highest benevolence for all, in the highest levels of love, light. And as we sit within these storms, so to speak, as we sit within all these storms that are brewing in the cocktail, the concoction, the convolutedness or seemingly convolutedness of life, oftentimes we have difficulty calibrating to the spins that are being set off right now, to the spins that are setting us apart from the mundane or the normal. I'm just focusing on the breath. We invite you to see past the illusion. We invite you to see past a conclusion. For nothing is conclusive. There are no ends. There are no beginnings. There is just now. The more and more people focus on how they are feeling in the moment, and if they are in truth, if they are in alignment with their highest good, their highest levels of love, light, their highest expansiveness, versus when they are not, and making choices from that choice point, from that, I'm hearing the other is versus counterproductivity. The more often people will find themselves in more alignment, in straight, I'm hearing like the straits of oneness, a streetcar named desire, basically in alignment with more of what we desire versus what is counterproductive to our intuition, into our lots of plays on words here, guys. Let us step aside for a moment and get out of our own way. For we are oftentimes not fully in tune with what the universe is offering. And we feel that we must tune into, I'm seeing all kinds of things, distractions that are outside of our truth. Heed the call. What brings us joy? What brings us repose? What is it that we are feeling divinely guided to turn into? Rather than going down paths that have no, I'm seeing dead ends. Perhaps allowing ourselves to follow the great winding road of life and recognize that it is never ending, that there is a spiral dynamic constantly at play in exchange. If we find our spiral, our golden means, it will allow us to change and to perceive the changes in our lives from a higher dimensional perspective, from a higher vantage point. It will allow ourselves to refrain from being taken for a ride, taken advantage of. For as we stay in this still point, in this golden means, in this 0 point, if you will, it allows us to advance in wisdom. So it's a play on words, to get taken advantage of versus advantage, advancing in age, age, our wisdom. It will allow ourselves to feel more like we are advancing forward in our lives rather than we're just spinning our wheels. Recognize that we may feel sometimes as if we are spinning our wheels, and in retrospect, perhaps sometimes we are. However, if we are doing this from a conscious state, space of 0 point reality, we allow ourselves to spin all the right wheels, to spin all the right reels, to line up with, to I'm seeing hook, line, and sinker. I'm seeing fish line. I'm seeing threads of energy. To aim true from a higher perspective. This allows us to hook in and to stay connected with our higher aspects, our higher timelines. For oftentimes we are waylaid on our trip. We are weighed down by our misconstrued notions, our misinterpreted realizations. So this is a big play on words, guys. What they're showing me is what we make real into our lives and what we realize is based on our knowledge, our wisdom, our experiences. And as we advance, this knowingness becomes stronger. But if we're hooking into other people's beliefs, values, systems, and methods that are lining up with gurus, that are lining up with, this is the only way, this is the only path, this is the only choice. Those are choice points that we are essentially giving energy to and connecting threads with, which think of it as a fishing net. And you know what it's like if you've ever fished or been with somebody that's fishing and that line gets all tangled up. You just have to cut that line sometimes. What they're showing me is it's okay to jump ship. It's okay to cut that line and say, this no longer works for me. And to recognize that in that moment is making a choice point. And it does not mean that we have to attach ourselves to old belief systems about anything. That is the old way. And they're also showing me that this is a lot of realization is happening for many people, and it can be very uncomfortable. It can be very scary. They also want me to touch briefly, you guys, when I say they, it's my higher selves, it's my higher version, it's my higher aspects that are tapping into source, which we are all connected to, which you have connections with as well, of course, because you are source. Also, 0 point, all of this heart. I've talked about heart math a lot. It's beyond that. But I've also brought up Dan Winters, which I just had a comment on this. Dan Winters, apologies, I have not replied to all of your comments. I am working on that as best as I can. In between everything else that's going on, right? But Dan Winters is somebody who sheds a lot of light on the 0 point field. And heart math is a really good tool. I know that he doesn't necessarily, heart and heart math aren't on the same page on some things, but it doesn't matter. It's the same concept that when we get here and we get into that bliss factor, that bliss charge frequency, it allows us to connect to that 0 point field. It allows us to be in that golden point so that when we make a choice, we are not being distracted by our other distractions. We're here so we see clearly, or if we don't see clearly, we can ask for guidance and we will get it as long as we are allowing that energy to come in, if that makes sense. A lot of people ask for guidance and they're all blocked up and they're all confused, and I've been there. We all go through that from time to time. And then in retrospect, we look back on it and realize we were getting that guidance the whole time. We were just ignoring it. Or we were so wrapped up and tangled up in our fishing line because we had fished in places that we weren't going to catch anything. Or we were fishing in places that we were going to get hooked up on something. Or we put out too much line and now we're all wrapped up and tangled in roots and wires and wind and elements. And what happens is it's sometimes time to clean that up and to stop branching out so many lines everywhere and come from our heart, because this is what lines us up with our highest frequencies, with our appropriate boundaries, with our objectivity. Rather than placing our awareness and our attention on an object and casting our fishing line towards that object, we have to recognize where attention goes, energy flows. So yes, it's good to have a goal, and yes, it's good to connect with other light workers and beings, but it starts here. And if it feels good and it feels appropriate, meaning it's not, guys, bliss and feeling good are not necessarily excitement, meaning it's like, it'll feel exciting in a different way. And so a lot of people get wrapped up in relationships, for example, because they get all excited and they're all hot and bothered, so to speak. We've all been there, right? But essentially that isn't true love. That isn't true bliss. Bliss has a calm feel to it, and it's good to be excited about life and excited about a relationship, a spouse or a partner or an adventure, but it isn't necessarily about being that way all the time. And I think a lot of people feel that's where they have to get, and it's not about getting there. It's not about feeling those sweaty palms and heart palpitations every time you hang out with someone. That is not all the time. It's not sustainable. So one of the messages, I'm kind of just went into flow, and now I'm still in flow, but one of the messages that comes through is it is about sustainability. It isn't about attainability. So it's not about attaining, getting somewhere. It's not about what's next. It's about sustaining our 0 point bliss charged frequency, love, coherence is what heart math calls it, whatever you want to call it. It's sustaining that unification. And the more you sustain that harmonization, I always think of the harmony, like if you listen to Crosby, Stills and Nash, they have that song, Southern Cross, which is a huge activating song for myself. They're in that beautiful harmony. When you sustain that harmony, you can hear anything that isn't in harmony. And it might be something that you're used to experiencing, and all of a sudden you go, wait a minute, that doesn't sit well with me anymore. I don't feel like I want to do this project anymore. I don't feel like this person they're exciting to me for whatever reason, but is that sustainable? And that's what the biggest message that I get that's coming through is that sustaining once you attain it, or forget about attaining something, getting into oneness with you. Sustaining that will assist us in attaining or bringing in, getting somewhere that is in alignment with our sustainability and not something that's going to burn us out. Literally, this can be jobs, it can be even energy work. A lot of us get, and myself included, we get high on activations and downloads and upgrades, and then all of a sudden you don't feel like you're getting them in the same way. And it's like, well, what am I doing wrong? And again, that isn't sustainable thinking, because that takes you out of bliss, it takes you out of coherence, and it puts you into disharmony. So that's one of the biggest messages that's coming through, is sustaining that. How do we sustain that? We sustain that by doing what we need to do to feel balanced, which means taking those breaks, taking a nap, sleeping when we need to, not sleeping. If we feel energized, get up and create. Don't force ourselves to sleep if we're feeling so high. Paying attention to our internal clock. You'd be surprised that sometimes we don't have to get so much sleep and we can still feel okay the next day. When I go through those, I get up and I meditate. I get up, I listen to some binaural beats. I get up and I write. Or I'll put something to listen to while I'm thinking that I feel guided to listen to. So there's a lot of different variations on how to just sustain that energy. Listening to music, going for a hike, getting outside barefoot, get in the sun. All of these things, it's not just about sitting down and not doing anything and getting into the void. That's not what it's always about. Different times, depending on the cycles that we're in, take us to try something different, to get us out of the cycle that we're in, sometimes to get us to a different space. So the other message that's coming through about that is, because of that energy, it is about, and reading a book, reading, watching a show that you feel makes you wonder or think, or kind of, sets that excitement for you. So much. Okay, so let's go into a little bit, see if there's anything else, because I might end on this note. I can't tell what number I'm at, so I'm going to end on this note, and I might do just a little toning. As we allow ourselves to stay in stillness and harmony, or to move with the excitement of peace, we allow ourselves to sustain a unification within the body, within the brain, within the organs, within the pipes. So they're showing me an organ, like a piano, and the pipes of the organ, they harmonize at a certain frequency and they stimulate certain things with the body, but of course they're showing me pipelines as well. So it allows us to stay connected with our highest aspect. It allows us to stay connected with our guides, our brothers and sisters. And I'm being reminded to remind everybody that, and I just had this message come through in a beautiful session with a light worker, fellow light worker in Starseed. And it was more about recognizing that we are our own guru. We don't need to call in through us another middleman or woman. It's great if we connect with these beings, because they are here to assist us and they are here to teach us. But we are also masters in our own right, and it is our birthright to bring through our own self-mastery, our own self-worth, so to speak, and knowing that we are embodied. Because as I was explaining to this light worker, what I see is, whenever I do sessions with people, I see their higher self. I see these other aspects of them that are hanging out, that are there. And we are embodying those aspects to a certain extent, right? We aren't just 3rd, 4th, or 5th dimensional beings. We are existing in parallel universes and worlds and higher dimensions as well as lower dimensions. And we have multiple realities if we want to just go there. So sometimes it's about recognizing that we are, if you're into, and I brought this up, let's say you're really connected with the angelics or the archangels. You are an angel. You're connecting with that, let's say, version of yourself. So yes, you can send love and light to these other beautiful archangels and ascended masters, but the only reason you're able to connect with them is because you are there with them. You are there in essence, or you've been there, or you will be there, and everything is happening now, if that makes sense. So I just went a little multidimensional. And it's the same thing with Jesus and the Buddha and all of these ascended masters, you know. We are connecting with them because there's an aspect of us that exists with them. And for some of us, those aspects are stronger with particular gurus or individuals. But what my guides keep asking me to remind everybody is that that aspect exists with them. We don't have to exist as them because we are all connected. So therefore, if I've been an Arcturian, for example, then I just call in the Arcturian energy that I am connected to, right? And that brings forward from me and my own memory that's held within my molecular structure and beyond those frequencies and those energies. So while we might call in our beautiful guides and beautiful beings to work with us, we're being invited to really recognize that the only reason we're capable of doing that in the first place is because we're hanging out with them. And we're bringing it here on Earth. And that's how it works. That's what we agreed to come here and do. Anchor in these energies so that these connections can be reestablished. And this is just one message of infinite messages that come through. So I just wanted to kind of go there for a moment. The more we're in coherence, the more we feel these aspects braiding together, so to speak, coming into a unification, then the more we connect with our brothers and sisters that we have already done this with before in previous and future lifetimes. And I'm going to go there because I'm being guided to just keep going. So maybe this won't get posted on Instagram, which is fine. There is also, or I'll have to break it down into 2 videos. There is also that aspect of time. You guys, we are changing history, literally. And if you have a difficult time wrapping your brain around that, it's okay. You don't have to understand it entirely. It's more about recognizing the more you change and the more we interact with our higher aspects now in this embodiment, the more we move it on down the line. We're moving that up the line and we're moving it out. So if we think of our future in front of us, our past behind us, and our parallel timelines out to the sides, for example, right? We can think of the fact that we are 0 point from one perspective, and I might do a video just on this. Whoever had asked me about timelines, this is a little bit about that, or dimensions. Thank you, by the way, and I'm sorry if I never answered that question entirely. But then there's a lot of videos that are even better than this video about that you can check out. But I think of it as 0 point. So this 0 point grid branches out and we're 0 point. We are the ground crew that is changing our ancestors, past, present, and future in every action and non-action that we take. So we don't realize that's when people don't, we don't realize the impact sometimes that we're having on everything. So when people think that they're not doing what they came here to do, well, from the perspective that I see, that's shown to me, and this is one of many, by the way, we are doing what we came here to do, but we can do it even better, or we can fulfill once we're in zero, when we're in the heart, when we're having fun creating, when we're experiencing joy in our lives, even when after we go through turmoil. Once we come out the other end of that turmoil, we are still assisting and doing work, so to speak, because now by us learning from that turmoil experience and coming through it stronger, we've now assisted in healing other aspects of ourselves. Past lives, future lives, parallel lives. It ripples out. In addition to that, it assists in the collective experience. Because if you are assisting in healing something within your own life, and all of a sudden somebody else around you, this is just one example of an infinite number of examples, another person sees what you're doing and they say, well, wow, that inspires me to do what I've always wanted to do. Or that inspires me to be kinder to my body. Let's say you're a person who has changed your eating habits and now you've become healthy and vibrant and life is good and you're inspiring other people around you. Or I could go on and on with those examples. That shifts that person's present moment, which then shifts their past, present, and future moment, which then changes everything. So I know that's sometimes difficult to wrap our brains around, but last but not least, I'm going to end on the note, and I'll talk about this over and over again, that if we stay in that space of sending love, feeling love, experiencing, and if we're having a bad day, that's okay. That's part of that turmoil, so to speak, that we're working through to show us what's out of alignment, to show us maybe how we got out of alignment, to remind us this isn't what I want to feel like. This isn't who I wish to experience my life with, because they bring out this turmoil in me. Or perhaps this person brings out this turmoil in me because it's a fear that I have and it's a reflection of what I'm working through or what I need to experience in order to get back into 0 point. Then the other perspective is from 0 point. If there is some turmoil that's going all around like these tornadoes, we see it from a very compassionate witness standpoint. It's a form, like I was saying with this beautiful starseed, he was saying how he felt detached. And some people would go, well, I don't want to feel detached. I want to feel alive. But detachment is alive. It isn't being completely reactive. It isn't feeling completely whipped around by the weather. It isn't feeling completely pulled in 5 different directions by your family, friends, etc., and circumstances in our lives. It is managing and sustaining our aliveness by being in that space of non-attachment. Doesn't mean that we still don't love and have joy and have excitement at times. It's a matter of recognizing when we are detached, that when something shows up in our lives that is not in alignment, we can see it from an unattached perspective and say, wow, rather than getting angry that it's showing up in our life, which happens to us too sometimes, right? We get angry, and then from an unattachment or detached place, we can go, wow, isn't that interesting? I just got angry. But in that moment, we then feel that anger goes away most of the time, because we realize that that person that just got angry, you're now the person that realizes you got angry, which is a different person in a different place than a moment ago when you were in the anger, therefore attached to that emotion, therefore in that space. Now you're the person who realizes and recognizes, wow, that's interesting that just showed up for me. And then see where that takes you. That's a little bit of being in that 0 point and saying, you know what, I I'm so appreciative of this experience showing up for me, which is then that gratitude. So I really like the idea of being in gratitude, because a lot of people think when we talk about bliss, and this is a video I'll probably just do specifically for this part, people think that when bliss is mentioned, it means we have to be like, oh, love and light all the time. And that isn't the case, because if we were in love and light all the time, we chose to come here and experience these emotions. So that unattachment doesn't mean we don't care, or that we're in such a state of bliss that nothing matters, because then that would put us into, I had this picture in my head, what is it, Guardians of the Galaxy? Spoiler alert, where Kurt Russell, the dad of the main character, has his own planet that he created, but he's like, nothing else matters, I'm the most important thing. That's ego. Oh, his name was Ego, wasn't it? Which is really funny. Even being in bliss all the time can be ego related. So it's that fine line of recognizing that I'm in gratitude. I'm not uncaring that this is going on. I love this person. I love my family. It doesn't mean that I'm so happy that what they're going through doesn't matter. It just means that I'm in a space of 0 point where I'm not so sucked into their drama that I'm not able to keep my own energy in sustainability, if that makes sense. Hopefully I explained that right. I should probably do a video just on that, but I just am being guided to kind of point on to all of these subjects. So those bliss-charged emotions, like for example, when we're excited about something, is great. That's that little bit of that fire, that spark to get us going. But again, it's not about sustaining that. It's about sustaining that space where if we're not feeling that way, we don't feel the opposite end where we're depressed and sad. And it's balancing out those highs and lows in a waveform, right? And then as we bring those together and harmonize, it becomes more of that 0 point, that coherence, that circle, that toroidal field, that spin. And then that puts us in a place of detachment, which means we are sovereign. We are in our own sovereignty, with none of these cords attached to other people, places, or things that are pulling on us and causing us to have an expenditure of energy unnecessarily. That doesn't mean we can't send them love or focus on them from that place of, isn't that interesting? Or I honor this person, I'm grateful for this person. It's no longer about that, oh, I'm so in pain because this person's in pain. Does that make sense? That's, as an empath, many of us have been on that in the path of everybody else,